Hello everyone, I'm back with another video. In this video, I'm going to give you a little insight on a story, God Sees the Truth But Waits, written by Leo Tolstoy, a very popular Russian writer. This story is about false conviction and imprisonment of a man for the murder he did not commit. The lead character's name is Ivan Demitrich Asinov. So he is the one who has to spend 26 years in the jail despite not committing any crime. I have found the summary of the story in Greg's Savo website. I'm going to read out summary from the website. It goes like this. In the Russian town of Vladimir, Ivan Demitrich Asinov lives a successful merchant with his wife and young children. One summer, as Asinov sets off for Nizhny Fair to sell his goods, Asianov's wife warns him not to go, for she has had a nightmare in which he returned with grey hair. Asianov laughs off her concern that the nightmare was a premonition and interprets the dream as a sign of luck. Asinov laughs off a concern that the nightmare was a premonition and interprets the dream as a sign of luck. Halfway to the town, Asinov encounters a fellow merchant with whom he stops for the night at an inn. The men have tea together and sleep in adjoining rooms. Asinov rises before dawn and sets off his horses and coachman while the air is cool. After 25 miles, he stops to feed his horses. During this break, two soldiers and an official arrive and begin questioning Asinov about his relationship with the man he had tea with the night before. The merchant was found dead with his throat slit. Since the two rooms were next to each other, it seems only natural that Asinov might know something. Asinov trembles in fear when the official searches his belongings and removes a knife streaked with blood. The men bind and arrest Asinov. His wife visits him in jail and faints at the sight of his dressed as a criminal. He says they must petition the Caesar, to which she says he has already tried to no avail. She asks him if he committed the murder, and Asinov weeps. If even his wife suspects him, he thinks after she leaves, then only God knows the truth, and it is only to God that he should appeal. He puts his faith in God and accepts his sentencing and ceremonial flogging. He is sent to work in the Siberian mines, over 26 years in Siberia. Asinov transforms into a pious old man. His hair turns white. His beard grows long. He walks with difficulty. And he never laughs. He prays often, and among other prisoners, he develops a reputation as a meek and fair man. One day, a newly arrived inmate named Makar Semyonich, who is about the same age as Asinov and from the same hometown, gives an account of what brought him to Siberia. He was suspected of stealing a horse when in reality he had only borrowed it. Nevertheless, he was convicted and imprisoned. The irony is that he had gotten away with doing something much worse earlier in his life. Asinov suspects the man is responsible for framing him. He questions Semyonich, who cryptically responds in a way that confirms Asianov's suspicion. Asianov remembers everything he has lost and is plunged into misery. He longs for a way to get revenge but resolves to stay away from the man or even look in his direction. After 2 weeks, unable to sleep, Asinov takes a walk near the prison to discover Semyonich digging a tunnel under his sleeping self. Semyonich angrily offers Asyonov escape and threatens to kill him if he would tell it to authorities about the tunnel. Asyonov says Semyonich has already taken his life and he shall do as God directs him. Soldiers discover the tunnel the next day. The governor arrives to question prisoners. None of them admitted who had done that. After wrestling with his desire for vengeance, Asyonov declines to say that he knows about Semyonich's involvement, even if it means that he will be punished himself. That night, Asyonov is not to note of in his bunk when Semyonich sits down beside him. Semyonich bends over and whispers a plea for forgiveness. He confesses that it was he who killed the other merchant and stole his money. He then planted the knives so that Asyonov would become the suspect. He falls to his knees and begs for forgiveness, promising to confess to the crimes so that Asyonov will get free. The old man replies that his life is already over and he has nowhere to go. At the sight of Semyonich's tears, Asyonov weeps himself. Semyonich begs again for forgiveness. Asyonov tells him that God will forgive him and that perhaps he himself is 100 times worse. Having said this, Asyonov feels a lightness enter his body. He no longer desires to go home or leave the prison. He wants only to die. The story ends with Semyonich confessing to the governor that he had killed the fellow merchant and he framed Asyonov. By the time the officials arrange Asyonov's release, Asyonov has already died. So the story ends with the death of Asyonov. And he had a really bad habit when he was young. So because of that reason, Asyonov has to spend 26 years inside the jail. When he was young, he used to get drunk with his friend and even fight with them. So because of that habit, even when he had not killed anyone, people started suspecting that he had killed the fellow merchant. So at the end, the story ends with his death. Even his wife warns him that he should not go to fair because he had seen a very bad dream. In her dreams, he had seen that Asyonov got back to his home. When he got back to his home, his beard was white and his hair was white. So she was trying to warn her husband not to go to fair that day. He denied that, thinking that could be the good luck. So he left his house despite her wife warning him. So this is a vicious circle of the fate we can see in the case of the lead character, and his name is Ivan Timirich Asyonov. So he got into trouble because of this main culprit whose name is Makar Semyonich. I hope you get the summary. That was the summary of the story. Now let's do question answer from the book. And the first question is, what bad habits did Asyonov have before his marriage? Before his marriage, he used to get drunk and was riotous when he had too much. Next question. What can be the meaning of his wife's dream? His wife has a dream that when he gets back to home from the fair, all his black hair get white. So it was some kind of sign for him not to go to that fair. So her dream is a premonition of terrible fate that awaits Asyonov. Another question, why did Asyonov think of killing himself? In his mind, he saw the place where he was flogged, the executioner and the people standing around the chains, and the convicts, all the 26 years of his prison life and his premature old age. The thought made him feel so bad that he was so ready to kill himself. Why did Makar disclose that he had killed the merchant? Makar disclosed that he had killed the merchant because he wanted to make Asyonov release from the prison. And he really feels bad that he had framed him and got him into trouble. Because of him, Asinov has to spend 26 years inside the jail. So even at the time when he could take the revenge, Asinov didn't take the revenge, and that is how Makar felt nice about him. He thought Asinov was a very good man, and he made a huge mistake framing him. So next question, why does not Asinov wish to return to his family at the end of the story? Asinov does not wish to return to his family at the end of the story because he believes that his wife was dead and his children have forgotten him. Now describe the character of Asinov. Asinov is the protagonist of the story God Sees the Truth But Waits. He is a successful young merchant whose comfortable life is disrupted when he is framed for murder and sent to Siberian prison for 26 years. His wife's suspicion of his guilt makes him conclude that he can rely only on God alone to know the truth. He earns a reputation as a good person among the prison officials and fellow prisoners. After finding himself imprisoned with the man who framed him, Asinov is ready to kill himself. However, at the end of the story, he is able to forgive Semyonich. He dies shortly before the authorities demand him to released. He dies shortly before the authorities order him to be released. So after going to prison, he became a different person. He was not a very studious person, but after going to prison, he started reading books based on God's power. This is how he transformed. So rather than taking revenge with Makar, he forgives him. What is the theme of the story? The story has a theme of injustice, acceptance, faith, and forgiveness. The case against Asinov is not convincing. The government authorities, without establishing motive or recovery of bloody knife and 20,000 rubles stolen from the merchant, declare him guilty. When his wife's appeal to Caesar is rejected, Asinov accepts that the injustice to which he is subjected is impossible to correct. He devotes himself to God to offer him the justice that man cannot give him. In prison, Asinov converts himself into a humble and religious figure. Officials and prisoners respect him for his impartiality in resolving arguments. Asinov's faith in God is strong that he believes he must be sinful to deserve the torturous life God has given him. After Asinov is unwilling to inform on Semyonich tunnel digging, Semyonich is stricken by Asinov's mercy. Asinov finally grants Semyonich forgiveness. Which symbols are used in the story and what do they indicate? The story offers several symbols for its artistic expression that supersedes flat writing. Asinov's house and two shops represent his family and material possessions. The prison itself is a symbol of Asinov's suffering and final spiritual transformation. His grey hair emerges as a clear symbol of his suffering, highlighting not only his aging but also his physical decaying resulting from punishment. His grey hair suggests how the stress of his wrongful imprisonment prematurely ages him. The blood-stained knife, unpredictably found in Asinov's bag, works as the crucial piece of evidence required to convict him. This knife symbolizes Asinov's lack of control over life. The book, The Lives of the Saints, Asinov buys and reads, represents his religious devotion toward God. What role does religion play in Asinov's life? What role does religion plays in Asinov's life? How does he undergo a spiritual transformation in the story? Christianity plays an important role in Asinov's life. He spends his entire life in a Siberian prison expecting for the right judgment of God. His wife's suspicion of his guilt makes him conclude that he can only rely on God. Imprisoned for 26 years, he loses his youthful cheerfulness